Revolutionary greetings, comrades. Zimbabwe is set to hold elections this year. We are not sure when the elections are going to happen, but we think that they are going to happen in July or August. The last election was held uh, in July, on the 31st of July, 2018. So 5 years later, in July, August, we should be having elections. We have seen some activities being done by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, where they've came up with a delimitation report, which was uh, handed over to President Emerson Mnangagwa. There's been a debate around the issue of voter registration, around the delimitation report itself, because after every 10 years, you need to redraw wards and constituencies. Some wards are to be collapsed or joined into other wards. Some constituencies, again, will become collapsed or joined into other constituencies. The number of wards and constituencies do not change, but they do so based on the number of registered voters in a particular constituency. For instance, they will say a constituency should not have less than 25,000 registered voters. There's also been the question about the diaspora vote, and we did in the previous video that the High Court in Zimbabwe, in Harare to be specific, recommended that the parliament should change the constitution and allow for the diaspora vote. Unfortunately, political parties that are represented in parliament have not done much in the last 5 years to ensure that indeed there's a constitutional amendment to ensure that there is a diaspora vote. We also recall that ZANU-PF brought a host of amendments, which unfortunately the main opposition party did not take advantage of. What they needed to do was to say, while we support these amendments that you are bringing, we are also pushing our own amendments, which was going to allow their many supporters that are in the diaspora to cast the vote wherever they are. And we know that, of course, that ZANU-PF, through whether it's their legal secretary, Patrick Chinamasa, has been arguing that they cannot participate, they cannot allow a diaspora vote because there are sanctions. But we know that sanctions are only in the North America and in Europe. There is no country in Asia or in Africa that has imposed sanctions on the political leadership in Zimbabwe, meaning that anyone can campaign. We know as a fact that the opposition and indeed the ruling party has structures even in South Africa. They can cast their votes in South Africa, but presently it is not the case. So what this means is that elections in Zimbabwe are going to be held under the same conditions as they were held in 2018 and 2013 and going back, because up to now there are no electoral reforms in Zimbabwe. The opposition for the last 4.5 years has not been pushing for electoral reforms. What we saw when Parliament opened after the harmonized elections of 2018, the issue that preoccupied the opposition for 2 years or more than 2 years was the issue of legitimacy of President Emerson Mnangagwa. You will recall that every time when President Emerson Mnangagwa went to Parliament, opposition MPs will walk away, not wanting to be addressed by him. So they then did not engage with their counterparts in Parliament to push for key electoral reforms in line with the SADC principles in holding free and fair elections. So we've missed an opportunity. We only saw in the last few days when members of Triple C then said they are tabling proposed electoral reforms. And we think it is late in the day, that 4.5 years or so to do so. This was not done. But because we know that ZANU-PF is not going to reform itself out of power, because once ZANU-PF on its own try to level the political playing field to ensure that opposition parties do campaign without any disturbances, that everyone is forced, other than themselves, to notify the police when they have public meetings and make it difficult for opposition supporters to gather without informing police to an extent that they get arrested. They will continue to do so because theirs is about retention of power. So elections in Zimbabwe, we predict that they are going to be held under the conditions that have always been there. So there are no electoral reforms. So, Comrade Gary Twala Jackson, given all this, what is happening, he then poses a key question, which I will read to you now. My system is playing games with me. So, Comrade Gary Twala Jackson writes. He says, do you think the upcoming elections in Zimbabwe should happen, considering the fact that there's so much capture of vital state institutions like law enforcement, the army, and the ZEC that is controlled by concubines of the president and sons of bootlickers from our region like Umdlwanega Obed Mpofu? I'm not sure who Umdlwanega Obed Mpofu from the region, Ngubani, Comrade Twala. But the issue is, Comrade Twala, we're talking of state power, and the state is an organ of classroom. So there's no way, as I'm saying, that ZANU-PF can reform itself out of power. So if ZANU-PF then reforms these key state institutions, which you are talking about, which you are saying they are captured, it basically means it is facilitating its way out of power, and it is not going to do so. And in any case, of course, the election in Zimbabwe is about reforming the state, because the ruling class uh, 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 thinks that ZANU-PF is advancing or protecting its economic interests in Zimbabwe. Remember, in one discussion that we used to have, is that the state in Zimbabwe has not failed the class that it represents. Yes, it has failed everyone because its mandate is not to advance the interest of the working class and the peasants. The state, as it is currently constituted, it advances the interest of the class that it represents. And we gave reasons on how we say so. Indeed, Comrade Jackson, Gary Twala Jackson, not Zimbabwe state or ZANU-PF will not reform itself out of power. So, but the call that we are making, of course, I've said it is late in the day. We know that observer missions from the African continent and the progressive nations will be going to observe elections in Zimbabwe. And as Zimbabweans, what we are calling for is that elections must be held under the minimum standards as set by SADC protocol on free and fair elections. That is the only demand that the people of Zimbabwe need. But of course, as I've said, that the main opposition or the opposition parties represented in parliament do not think that it is important to push for electoral reforms. In the next video, we will talk about the 40 million US dollars that was given to each MP, which we spoke to last year, which was discussed as a loan, because we are now getting into the election mood. So I want to discuss what is the relevance of the 40 million US dollars that was given to each member of parliament. You know that the deputy ministers were given 350,000 US dollars, cabinet ministers were given 500,000 US dollars, disguised as a loan, housing or motor vehicle loan. So we will unpack this to understand what it means in the context of the 2023 elections. Please write your comments in the comment section, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Comrade Cassius Mpofu, we will, of course, deal with the question that you have asked on UIF, That is for those that are holders of ZEP who are still making consultations. We will certainly, sometime next week, come back to you on what we think should happen. And Comrade Goodwin Pira, I know you're Manchester United, so don't worry about us at Liverpool. Otherwise, comrades, have a great day. Please do not forget to subscribe. Goodbye.